factories of peace is interwoven across air, land, sea, space, and cyber domains. Those who would seek to threaten peace, diminish mutual prosperity, and challenge territorial integrity will continue to do so across all these domains. We must be prepared to meet the moment. By committing to work together, whether it is through increased interoperability and information sharing or supply chain diversification, we can deliver advanced capabilities faster, strengthen our respective security postures in theater, and synchronize activities across domains. All of these actions will improve our trust. We have opportunities to leverage our individual strengths, removing barriers like export controls that have restricted our ability to share technology and drive innovation across borders. We can expand efforts such as Quad and AUKUS to encourage information and technology sharing. As the leading defense technology company across all domains, we are intently focused at Lockheed Martin on 3 key areas: delivering at scale, innovating with speed, and investing in performance. One example is with Golden Dome, the United States definitive air and missile defense solution. Golden Dome involves aircraft and drones that sense the threat. Then comes the interceptors and sensor fusion fire control. Next is the resilient command, battle management, cyber defense software that tie it all together, not to mention the uninterrupted satellite-based surveillance and communication. By sharing data, software interfaces, and hardware designs across these domains, we can create an end-to-end shield that will detect, track, and defeat threats faster than any historically siloed approach. Think of integrated defense as a series of protective nets. If a threat slips past one layer, there's another behind it to stop it. Our approach to layered defense for the U.S. homeland assures more decision space and more options against incoming threats. We invest roughly $3 billion in R&D, innovation, and production capacity on an annual basis, and are investing more than $6 billion in digital and business transformation. What does this investment do? It gives us speed. Speed to bring new capabilities out of innovation labs and to the front lines of conflict at speed and scale. Our legacy is our advantage. Over 100 years of invention, of innovation, of engineering design, of technology development, of major weapon system production, of sustainment, and of proven performance in conflict. We do not rest on our legacy. Invention and innovation are around every corner, and the rate of change of technology demands actively investing in groundbreaking and transformational technology through things like investments in startups and non-traditional businesses. All of this is important to sustain capacity and deliver at speed and scale. Additionally, both approaches accelerate capability, which is critical to our warfighters, and diversify our supply chain. These same technologies are also helping with defensive systems, such as the Guam Defense System and the Australia Air 6500. In addition to Golden Dome, we make investments globally to bolster the defense industrial network, increasing resilience across industries by applying anti-fragility measures to ensure operations withstand shocks, disruptions, and are able to be ramped more quickly to meet the demands of the ever-evolving threat. Events over the past week have truly underscored the critical role of layered air and missile defense. the importance of sustained interceptor production as a cornerstone of modern deterrence, and the need for resilient supply chains. We continue to make meaningful investment and progress as we foster a more collaborative ecosystem that connects the defense industries of India and other partner nations in the region to expand supply chain capacity and accelerate delivery of key systems. As one example, we're partnering with Australia on the Guided Weapons and Explosive Ordnance Enterprise, establishing sovereign missile manufacturing, boosting stockpiles, and improving supply chain resilience. Similarly, in the Philippines, Lockheed Martin's footprint has expanded significantly since the introduction of legacy helicopters, trainers, and transport aircraft in the 1950s. Today, our operations encompass real-time sustainment, strategic partnerships, and dedicated teams in-country, reflecting our commitment to the armed forces of the Philippines' modernization and local industry development to increase security, reliability, and resilience of supply chains. Lockheed Martin has been associated with India for more than 7 decades, and now has been a trusted and strategic partner to the country for over 3 decades. We have established successful manufacturing presence in India through our Tata Lockheed Martin Aerostructures Limited Partnership and Tata Advanced Systems Limited Partnership. These support manufacturing parts for the C-130J and aerostructure components for Sikorsky that are integrated in the global supply chain, already demonstrating commitment to bilateral industrial partnerships and mutual advantages of growing local industries and building resilient supply chains. For the United States, supporting India's growth can in turn help catalyze Indian investment in U.S. markets, build trusted networks, and ensure future economic prosperity for both nations. Aside from this conventional approach, we're embracing partnering with startups and non-traditional companies to excel at AI and quantum computing, additive manufacturing, and autonomy. These alliances inject new ideas, they streamline processes, and they accelerate the rate at which we deliver efficient defense to the warfighter in our nations. The key themes here are the importance of continuing to build capacity and strengthen capability, to innovate and invest, and we do that through partnership. There is strength in long-standing relationships across our nations. The strategic dialogue we are having today and the cooperation that we have across many decades must continue for global security. At the end of the day, we all have a shared goal: to ensure security, stability, and prosperity across the Indo-Pacific region. I look forward to hearing the distinguished panelists' thoughts and the discussion that follows. Thank you so much.
Hello and welcome to the following panel discussion, which stands between you and lunch. So I hope that you bear with us and that we are so interesting that you forget your hunger. My name is Jana Polirin, and it's a pleasure to moderate today's conversation on Forges of Peace, Ordnance Factories for the Liberal Order. Actually, I have to admit that I was struggling a bit with the title of this panel because I thought the Liberal International Order was kind of a thing of the past, looking at how the Trump administration had positioned itself, calling it basically obsolete and against US interests, looking at Mark Carney's speech at the Davos conference, and also looking at the German Chancellor, the country I come from, who basically declared the liberal order over. So maybe I would suggest to concentrate on defense industrial cooperation between the US, Europe, and other partners, especially in Asia and in the Indo-Pacific. The challenge at hand is quite obvious. The war, Russia's war against Ukraine, has shown, especially the West, that our defense industrial base has significant flaws. Russia is a $2 trillion economy. It has outpaced NATO in some areas with its combined GDP of $50 trillion. when it comes to drones, when it comes to ammunition, when it comes to tanks, and all this despite heavy sanctions, although with a little help from Russia's friends, China, Iran, and North Korea, but still. So, and I think the situation has just become more tense and more difficult to handle because of the Iran war that is taking up a lot of US resources, especially when it comes to interceptors or ammunition, resources that the Europeans have been hoping to buy from the United States to support Ukraine. So all of this reveals a structural weakness in the Western defense industrial base. It's about fragile supply chains, workforce shortages, a lack of manufacturing capacity, and all that after decades of reduced defense spending. Another question, talking as a European here for Europe, is how to manage dependencies, especially when it comes to our dependency on the United States and the Trump administration's intent to reduce its presence, its commitment, its engagement for European defense. So a stronger EU technological industrial defense space is not a nice to have, as we thought for many decades, but now it's a necessity. And I have to say that trust and reliability when it comes to US suppliers has taken a small hit lately. So there is more interest from the European side in diversification. And against this backdrop, today's panel will explore one central question, and that is how can the West restock its arsenal and what new partnerships or industrial models might be required to achieve this. So basically, in brief, how we can all cooperate more and better together. I want to start this panel asking for a military perspective, because we have two representatives from the military on stage. And I start with the Admiral. Admiral, what, from your military perspective, what lessons do recent military confrontations or wars offer about the scale of industrial capacity required for modern warfare? So what are the lessons that you have been taking away watching all this unfolding?
Thank you, Anna. Thank you very much. Firstly, it is an honor to be present here at the 11th edition of Raisina Dialogue. And in a short span of over a decade, this has become a platform of choice where people from all across the globe can come and discuss issues of global interest freely and candidly. So congratulations to the organizers. I'm sure you must have seen that this is a women-heavy panel. And just 2 days before the International Women's Day, me and Abhishek
congrats to the organizers.
Yeah, me and Abhishek are really very honored to be in this panel. I'm sure Abhishek also feels the same way. So thank you very much, ladies, for tolerating us. But coming to your question about what's happening, I'm not going to comment on the geopolitics. But what has come out certainly loud and clear as we have monitored what's happening around the globe, especially in the last 3-4 years, that this idea of short and decisive wars may have questions put across. So, and therefore, there is obviously a thought process going on that what we thought of the post-Cold War peace dividend, that I think has certainly ended. And therefore, countries have to be ready for their own national security, and in that case, obviously building their own defense industrial complex. Most countries are doing it in some way or the other, whether individually or in partnership with other countries, but that is what is happening. Not only one has to produce in scale, but also one has to be ready because the technology is changing at the speed of thought. One has to be ready while producing, upgrade while producing. And that is one thing which I think all of us, especially in the military domain, have seen, and one has to be ready on that count. As an operational man, I would certainly look at rapid adaptation, because time is not going to wait for us. That when your equipment is ready, then only you will be subjected to situations, and therefore one has to be ready on that. More importantly, magazine depth and inventory. I think Martha mentioned, and you also mentioned that some figures which you gave. I'm sure the audience is fully aware of that. But what we believe is that there is a need for us to have the capacity to surge when we require, and that obviously requires very, very evolved defense industrial base. So these are some of the issues which we see, the lessons which we have learned from what is happening around the globe.
I have a follow-up question that might be slightly uncomfortable, but it's on many people's mind where I come from. India has emerged increasingly as an important security and defense partner for Europe, for the United States, but a large part of its military equipment still originates from Russia. Do you think, or from your perspective, does this create real limitations when it comes to deeper defense industrial cooperation? So is this hindering us to cooperate further?
You must have heard of strategic autonomy, and it's not only India, because of what is happening, in terms of whether it is democratization of dual-use technology, whether it is monopolization of resources, or whether it is weaponization of supply chain. All these things are forcing many countries actually to go for self-reliance, and then dealing with countries based on convergences, as also based on common thought process. So we in India obviously believe in Atmanirbharta and self-reliance, as are many other countries, and we deal with many our partner nations to develop capabilities in the defense sector based on co-development and co-production. As far as your question is concerned, I think the answer lies in that we as a country are fully aware as to how to work with many partners, and Russia happens to be one partner.
Thank you. I turn to the Lieutenant General and come to Australia. So Australia has placed a real strong emphasis on defense industrial cooperation with partners in recent years. AUKUS was already mentioned. So what has been your experience taking stock, looking back, and how do you, coming back to what the Admiral just said, see the balance between national defense capability and integrated supply chains among allies and partners? So where is the balance between being autonomous but also being dependent?
Thank you for the question, and it's a privilege to be able to join this dialogue and be on such an esteemed panel. I'm actually meant to be Admiral David Johnston, the Chief of Defence, so it wouldn't have been an all-female panel, but close, Chief of Navy. I think from an Australian perspective, just as our alliance and partnerships run deep and have been in existence for many decades and over a century in some cases, so too is our integration and relationship with industry. And there are a number of industry in the room today, there are a number of nations in the room today, which Australia has a very proud and rich history and relationship with. And we want to continue that. So the Australian government has developed a defence industry development strategy. It's helping us to expand that even further and to encourage us to build those relationships. We're realistic though. The entire globe is after capacity. The entire globe wants more weapons, it wants more military platforms, it wants to get after things, but there is only so much capacity that industry can provide, and at some stage, as we see between our conflicting events that are happening around the world, there needs to be a prioritisation. That is a challenge, and it's one that we're all very much attuned to.
And from your perspective, where do you see the biggest bottlenecks when it comes to defence industrial cooperation from the Australian experience?
Well, I think there's a range of factors that contribute to that. One is budget, the prioritisation and budget by governments. I mean, AUKUS is a positive example of a tech sharing, information sharing between 3 countries, and we've already seen benefits just from that in terms of the enhancements to our capability and our ability to be lethal, survivable and resilient as defence organisations. There always are going to be competing priorities, but that's why we engage, that's why we have amazing relationships, bilats, multilats, different things. You know, we're an enhanced enduring partner of NATO as well, even though Australia is such a geographically dislocated nation. But we're very proud of all of the relationships we have, and you know, at the end of the day, we're actually trying to do deterrence by denial. So we're trying to get left of conflict and not actually go into that realm.
Thank you. I turn to the European Union, or to you more personally, Benedicta, as a representative of the EU here today. The EU has recently launched several initiatives to strengthen its defense industrial base, actually since the war against Ukraine started. The EU has also been very actively rethinking its partnership model when it comes to cooperating in the security and defense sector. So how open is Europe really to integrate partners outside the traditional transatlantic ecosystem into supply chains and into political cooperation? So how open are we in Europe?
So the first lesson for us is and was that we have to do more in Europe. If you read the latest national defense strategy from the United States, it says that conventional defense in Europe is for Europe. So there's a huge task on our plate. That means that we need to be stronger, we need to have more capabilities, we need to cooperate better within Europe. That's something that we've also seen because of the Russian war in Ukraine. So it means that we need to have, as you said, more programs. We need to have more investments. We need to have, we need to work more jointly. But we don't do this in a bubble. So I think we are still very open because we know that we need strong partners to do this. We want to be a strong partner, but we also need strong partners for this endeavor. So the programs that we have are each open to participation of partners. Both when it comes to industrial cooperation, up to 35% global partners can participate. We also have specific cooperation with more with partners that have signed specific agreements, like for example Canada just joined the so-called SAFE agreement, which is a $150 billion euro investment in defense capabilities in Europe. We also have the strategic defense partnerships, which we just signed with India, and that's also the reason why I'm in India here. And that shows that we want to cooperate deeply with partners. But I also have to say that what comes from the European Union is one layer amongst many in which the 27 member states that we have invest. So, of course, we have European programs. Now there's the opportunity to invest. We have the SAFE program, but we basically, we also have, in 2025, we had almost 400 billion euros in national defense budgets, and member states are free to procure from whomever they want. So there are 2 different layers that have different rules, and member states are free to cooperate with whomever they want.
You can keep the mic a bit longer because I want to come to India specifically. You already mentioned that there is a new security and defense partnership that needs to be filled with life now. Could you share the expectations that you sense in Europe when it comes to this partnership? I read about maritime security, cyber defense, co-production of military equipment. So is that the scope? What is our hope? What are our wishes? What do you want to convey to this audience?
So first of all, I'm very happy that we have this partnership after signing the mother of all trade agreements. We are very happy that this was followed up immediately by the security and defense partnership. What does it do? It basically opens the door to a more close relationship. We're not starting from scratch. We have, as you mentioned, sectoral dialogues with India already for quite a while on lots of different issues, including space, CT, cyber, maritime security, and many of these topics have increased in importance. If you look at, for example, maritime security, there are so many different issues that we need to talk about. What is my hope? My hope is that we exchange, but my hope is also that we cooperate so that we have a tangible added value, both of us, in what we do. So if, just to give you a few examples, we had a joint exercise last year with India in the maritime field. We're hoping to do that again. So it's about having really practical cooperation between the navies. We also want to exchange on cyber, where, as I said, we have a long-standing dialogue to talk about capacity building, to talk about threat landscape, to talk about how we tackle the threats, how we respond, how we make systems resilient. If you look at space is of course a hugely important domain, and that's also about understanding what is going on in space, and how do we ensure also on the multilateral level, where India is a very important actor, how can we ensure that we have responsible state behavior?
I give you the floor in a moment, Admiral, for a two-finger, but I have to ask a last provocative or semi-provocative question. I've put you on the spot, so I need to put Benedicta on the spot as well when it comes to the US and Europe. So just bluntly asked, is our appetite for cooperations with other partners now significantly higher because we sense a lack of trust when it comes to our transatlantic traditional partnership? So is that one of the reasons why we are engaging?
I think we took different lessons from the development in the recent years and year. The first one is that we need to be more independent ourselves. The President of the Commission talks about Europe's independence moment. So it means that we need to be strong, we need to be able to act independently where needed, but of course we want to act with partners where possible and necessary. We also know that we need to diversify, that too high dependencies are not good, whether you look at energy, whether you look at trade, whether you look at security. Diversification, I think, is the lesson that we can probably all agree on. And of course, I mean, we have a very close transatlantic partnership, and this will remain. We have NATO, and the EU is doing a lot to support the EU members that are also NATO allies. But we also know that we need to cooperate with partners globally. I mean, I think, Susan, you said you are so far, geographically, you are so far removed from the NATO transatlantic area, but I think in the end, geography often doesn't matter, because the threats that we face, they don't stop at borders. So I think what is happening in Europe directly affects countries across the globe and vice versa. So we also know that we need to build our partnerships, and I'm very happy that we signed the security and defense partnership with India, but also with the Republic of Korea. We will sign it with Australia. So for me, the area to which I travel most is the Indo-Pacific, and it's hugely important that we forge close partnerships there.
Okay, so de-risking or diversification, to put it in more gentle terms, is something that unites us all. Admiral, you had a two-finger. I ask you to keep it short because not everybody has spoken yet.
No, I just wanted to jump in with, I just wanted to compliment that this thing was signed on 27th of Jan. And what I can tell is that what we can offer India is that, of course, there is scale and market. There is a huge STEM pool. You know, we have got the second largest STEM graduates in the world. Arguably, we have the largest software pool talent. Then, we, of course, cost is another factor in development and in production. So we offer a large number of advantages if you co-produce and co-develop and co-produce and build in India. And we look forward, we have already been given a membership to participate in the Security Action for Europe, SAFE regulation, under which we are looking forward to be part of this ReArm initiative of Europe.
you built a perfect bridge for me to turn to Abhishek and to turn to the perspective of the industry. So you represent Rolls-Royce here, and in the broader region. So from your perspective, how is all that going? What is the potential and what are the bottlenecks?
Thank you so much. And again, Jana, thank you. And it's a privilege to be on this panel. From an industry perspective, first and foremost, what we have to realize is the supply chain disruption is an industry-wide issue right now. And if you think about it in the current context, it's absolutely important that we as an industry act as the bridge between the strategic intent and autonomy that the countries and governments are looking for and the industrial execution. And hence provide a very resilient, high-performing, and a stable and a sustainable, supply chain. So if you start thinking about it, I mean, we have to meet the needs of today and tomorrow from our customer perspective. And essentially, if you think about it, what we are really trying to do right now from a current perspective is how do we really meet the requirements so that it meets the surges that are there? How do we really diversify our supply chain? How do we go about, really meeting the needs across the operators? Because we as Rolls-Royce, essentially we supply to customers around 150 customers across the globe. So you're looking at the demand, which is all across the place. The supply chain is all across the place, right? So what we are really trying to see is, from a current perspective, how do we really build that resilience in the supply chain? From a future perspective, it all comes down to how do we meet the specific needs of the various operators. So, for example, there are multiple models that we are a part of. If you think about it, the first one is around, let's take India as an example. Right now, India, under the Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative, we are trying to see how we can actually really build the self-reliance that is required. And as a part of that, as Admiral Sir did mention, co-development is a key requirement. So we have been working very closely and getting a lot of support between the UK government and the Indian government under the Vision 2035 roadmap framework that is there. And we're trying to see how we can really help and work together on a co-development of a gas turbine engine, which is, as we all know, a very critical technology. So there is this one model that we are working on in order to meet the future requirements. Of course, in addition to that, we're also trying to see how do we really expand the supply chain in country. Our intent, of course, is to expand the supply chain by 10x. And the reason we can actually think about doing that in a country like India, because I took that example now, is because for the simple reason there is an end-to-end capability that exists, there's a skill that exists over here, there is an intent, there is a lot of policy tailwinds that we have seen, which is really helping us. And most importantly, it is the, you can say this, the geopolitical alignment that the country has, which enables it to really work with multiple countries. So it's easier to build the supply chain from that perspective. The second model that we're using is of collaboration. So when you look at a lot of the collaborations that we have to meet the future requirements, one is with that's going on in the AUKUS. So of course, we are a part of that. The other one that you also look at is GCAP, where we are actually trying to, we are working with partners in Asia, in Japan, as well as Italy and UK. So we're trying to see how we can actually work on that collaborative model in order to deliver the requirements, the defense industrial requirements that exist with the customer. So it's a complete comprehensive look from today to future that we are working on.
Coming to the problems, or the problems that are often named as such, namely technology transfer and intellectual property, how much is it a problem for you?
So I think, it all comes down to, how things are working in a specific scenario, right? So, so for example, when we look at it between, let's say, UK and India, being from Rolls-Royce, that's how we work. We have seen, again, as I mentioned, under the, the frameworks that have existed, that getting the requirements to actually transfer technology is much higher. Whether it's about design technology or manufacturing technology, there's a huge willingness, under the, for the export approvals to be provided. But I think there are different models that we are pursuing in addition to just transfer of technology. What we, as in company and industry, have realized that transfer of technology, transfer of IP is good. It's nice to actually build a base, but it comes with its own limitations. So the way we have started kind of evolving and looking at this is, how do we actually co-create technology in a country? Because, so for example, we are trying to work on models where you're talking about co-creation of IP, and what that really does is that, of course, the IP ownership lies in country. For example, it will, let's say, if you're doing a program in India, which we're trying to do for combat, if successful and we move forward, the IP will lie in India. And that really actually provides the complete know-how and the know-why to reside in country. Because IP, to buy IP is a way of looking at it, but actually if you really want to absorb it, imbibe it, the way is to co-create it in country. So I think there is an element, as I mentioned, Yana, in terms of you can actually transfer technology, and we're getting a lot of support right now. But in addition to that, we're also trying to get into models of co-creation, I think, which is the future.
Thank you. I turn to G now and South Korea. But afterwards, I would also open it up to all of you. So prepare your questions and think about keeping them short and precise. But G, I wanted to ask you, South Korea has become one of the most dynamic defense industrial export markets in recent years. It has also great cooperation with many European countries. When I look at Poland, many Germans are envious of the close cooperation between Poland and South Korea when it comes to tanks. So what is the South Korean success story, or what can we learn?
Thank you very much first, and it is my honor and privilege to be in this discussion. I think that South Korea is growing and rising as one of the stakeholders in the global defense market. And South Korea's economic policy, I must say that it was export-oriented because of the relatively small domestic market, and that is linked to the defense industrial strategy as well. That's why how South Korea became a partner to all the countries in this panel as well. And actually what South Korea guarantees and try to guarantee is that the rapid delivery and the efficient pricing policy. So cost is not the only major factor in making the partnership for the arms trade and also for the global supply chain, but competitive pricing policy in combination with the rapid delivery is really important. And that's why South Korea is more focusing on the AI and machine learning because these days inventory management and the predictive maintenance and also the supply evaluation review, everything is run with the AI system. So that's why the role of the private entities are growing, and we expect that the more contribution will be coming from the private entities, not only for the global defense supply chain, but also for the strategy making in the future too. And the last point is that I think the Korea values very much about the strategic partnership. Korea works with the countries within the alliance system and also within the partnership as well. So technology transfer and local production or joint R&D are the main focus these days as a rising stakeholder in this field. Thanks.
Thank you. So I have one exercise for you before I give the floor to the speakers that I've already lined up, or the audience. And it's really kind of a 30 seconds answer that I want you to provide. So if you could implement one policy decision in the next 5 years to solve or to advance our joint topic here, to make progress, what would that be? Any volunteers?
So one thing that we'd like to get after, I think that allies and partners need to prioritise together to work out not everyone going after the same technology gap and working out who can get after what so that together we're stronger.
I think strengthening of structured partnerships, I think, is a way to go forward. because there will always be a core dilemma about cooperation and sharing of technology, including the IP. And if we have to work together, we have to work under trust. And as far as India is concerned, you can remain confident that we are a trusted partner. Our Honorable Prime Minister said a few weeks back that trust is India's strongest currency. So that is where I think the whole thing lies. It's all about trust. And we have to build structures under which the safeguard of IP is within the part of the structure.
Thank you. I remind everybody kind of the 30-second rule.
Yes, I think that I fully agree with my co-panelists, and in addition to that, probably making the scientists networked is also important to make a strong ground for the global supply chain too, and the partnership and trust. Thanks.
I would say working on bilateral agreements, that's hugely important, whilst working also on the multilateral sphere, so to support the international rules-based order.
I think it's covered, but to a large extent, it's all about strategic partnership, whether it's on the bilateral or the multilateral level, both for co-design, so that we can really further the technologies and IP creation, or whether it's around the supply chain with friendshoring and other, supply chain activities.
I now turn to the left. There are young fellows lined up for questions. I think it's you? Yes, wonderful. Do you have a microphone? Please introduce yourself, and if you could address your question to one particular person. If you can't, it's also fine, but it makes my job easier if you do.
Thank you all panelists for a fantastic talk. My name is Aditya, I'm a young fellow. I wanted to ask, in today's modern war theaters, we see scarcity actually breeds innovation. From DJI drones being used in Ukraine to the RAD 500 missiles in Iran. Yet the West and Western defense contractors' expenditure in defense R&D is multiple magnitudes higher than our adversaries, the F-35 program being a good example. Why have the Western modern industrial complex failed in efficient and effective use of defense funds? And will the East, like Korea and Japan, provide an alternative? If Abhishek ji and Professor Ji can provide answers, I think they'll be the two best suited for this.
Okay, thank you very much. We collect questions, please.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much. My name is Miraj Zainbayev. I'm from Kazakhstan, and I'm also executive fellow of the Geneva Center of Security Policy in Switzerland. And I have a question actually to Admiral Dinesh Tripathi. India is often cited as a frugal solution to the Western scale issues. However, if India is to become a forger of peace for liberal order, as was proposed in the title of the panel, can it do so without becoming strategically over-leveraged? How does the Indian Navy balance the desire to be a global production hub with the necessity of maintaining strategic autonomy? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the third question.
Yes, hello, I'm Gaute, I'm a Norwegian diplomat, and my question goes out to who feels like answering it actually, because it's relevant for all of you. So several speakers have highlighted the importance of industrial scale and sustained investment for defense capabilities. But defense industrial capacity still requires decade-long investment horizons, while democratic mandates often run on 4-year cycles. So what institutional mechanism can bridge that gap so that industry has the certainty needed to scale production?
Thank you very much. I would take more questions from 2 more questions, so they have 5 panelists, and I give them the floor, if it's possible. I see a hand over there, and yeah, I can only take 1, so then to my left.
Hello.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Sorry, okay, the young fellows have a priority here. I thought then you were only 3
Yes.
lining up. Sorry, I didn't see you.
So this is Tejaswini Best from this side. So my question is regarding global securities and priorities. So I would like to ask Lieutenant General, in what ways does Australia believe in its cooperation with NATO in Ukraine sets a precedent for handling security challenges closer to home?
Are there more of you? No, then at least I take the gentleman over there. Yes. But I think you need to come, you come here.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for the opportunity. The one question really is to the EU representative. The US seems to really want to withdraw from NATO. It's given certain important commands to European countries to hold. So is there really a future for NATO, and the US really has not put boots on the ground or wanted to actively support Ukraine? And NATO countries have been reluctant to give the US bases to attack Iran. So in all of this, what's the future of NATO? And given that EU and NATO are more or less, most EU countries are NATO states or NATO partners. So what's the future of NATO? Thank you.
I think it's a bit unfair to ask this to an EU representative, but still, I think we start with you, G. Why did the West fail? Can you answer the question?
Thank you for the question. It's very interesting. And actually, I cannot fully agree with that Western failed and South Korea dominant, because South Korea is a rising stakeholder, still struggling to contribute to the global defense market. So probably it's too premature to do that. And for the defense cooperation, that South Korea has its own role, making a small space for that to stabilize the situation, current situations at its best, I can say. So this is what I can.
I have a question for, you want to take the Australia and NATO question next?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you for the question. And while Australia acknowledges that it has a focus on the Indo-Pacific, we certainly have not turned our back on anything else globally. And that includes why we're very much supporting Ukraine in their efforts to restore peace and stability in their country. And we're very proud of our contribution, both financially as well as the gifting of Abrams tanks, as well as training that we are doing together with our British colleagues. You know, it is very important that we restore international rule-based order, and the way that we do that is by being seen and being visible. So Australia is very much proud to contribute to Ukraine.
Abhishek, do you want to answer the question on the decade-long investment? Because as a company, you are basically dependent on money and orders. So what do we do with kind of this fragility when it comes to sustainability? I mean, we now see a lot of countries being very committed to investing a lot in defense, but how long will this last, and how can we make it more sustainable from an industry perspective?
Yeah, so I think absolutely, I think investment in defense is going to be really critical. We have to absolutely appreciate the fact that defense provides a level of deterrence, right, which is required for the national sovereignty, which in turn is what everybody looks for, a stable government. So I think it's really important that this investment continues. We are already seeing an uptick, and we are assuming it's going to go forward that way. What we have to also remember is that defense investment alone is not about defense. There are dual-use technologies that come out of it, which is again used for multi-purpose applications. And finally, do remember that when you actually do a lot of innovation, it also leads into the supply chain, talking about manufacturing, high-end technology manufacturing, which has a high multiplier effect when it comes to the economic viability of it. So I think defense spend is good from multi-purpose, whether it's about economic prosperity or for security resilience of a nation.
Benedicta, maybe you want to give the EU's perspective on the decade-long investment and how to sustain financing, and if you want also, or in a personal capacity, if you want to comment on NATO and NATO's future and how do we see it in Europe, or you as a personal, private citizen.
Thank you very much. So first of all, on the investment, it's a question that we debate a lot, and we know that it will be very difficult to give, for example, 10-year contracts. That's what we hear from industry. What do they need to ramp up? Ideally, they want to have very long contracts. I always say, look at the security situation and look at the budgets that are currently there. So, for example, we have the biggest threat in Europe, to Europe, that we've ever had since the Second World War. Russia is a huge threat. It will not go away. It's supported by allies, like you said in your introductory statement, China, DPRK, Iran. We also see what is going on in terms of new threats. So I think it's safe to say that the world will not become safer or more stable anytime soon. At the same time, we have huge budgets when you look at defense. I said that in the European Union, we had national defense budgets of almost 400 billion euros. At the same time, from the EU, we put in place programs that open access to around 800 billion euros. At the same time, we look at the next EU budget, which starts in 2028, which has over 100 billion euros in the EU budget alone. So there is so much money on the market. So threat plus money, for me, equals investments also on the industrial side. And now we have the example of, we have a loan for Ukraine, where 60 billion will go into support of military support for Ukraine. And we need this to be delivered within the next 2 years. So it will be a very important test for industry, what industry can provide in these 2 years. And it's a very specific program because, of course, we have a preference for Ukraine industry, for EU industry, but should they not be able to deliver, then we will go to third states and procure from partners. On the NATO question, I think it's very simple. I don't see the US withdrawing from NATO. Yes, conventional defense for Europe in Europe is for Europe, but that doesn't mean that the US is withdrawing from NATO. NATO has 32 allies. NATO has a very strong command and control structure where the EU is involved in everything, and you also mentioned Ukraine. The US is still a very important supporter of Ukraine, and for example, it is providing what we call the Pearl packages, so basically capabilities that are purchased by partners to go to Ukraine. So I'm very happy that we have this engagement.
Okay. I leave it to the Admiral to answer kind of everything that remains, especially the frugal solution, or India as a frugal solution, but you can also address whatever you want as long as it is within the remaining 1 minute and 45 seconds.
Thank you, Jana. Thank you very much, my friend from Kazakhstan. You know, Indian Navy is highly technology intensive, and we are aware of it. We also take pride in supporting Atmanirbharta, and therefore, as far as possible, we want to find solutions within the country. We have provided structures in terms of creating an organization called Navy's Indigenization and Innovation Organization. Thereafter, we have provided platform in terms of the Swavlamban, which I'm sure many of you would have taken part. We just had the 4th edition last year, wherein anybody in India, any technology they have got, they want to demonstrate, they can come and showcase that, and there are large number of success stories out of that. More importantly, I think the defense ecosystem in the country is really building up. We've got 16 DPSUs, more than 460 licensed companies, around 16,000 MSMEs, and the second largest defense ecosystem, defense startup ecosystem in the world, and we take great pride in that. So as far as possible, the Indian Navy is looking at indigenous solutions. We have declared that we want to become fully Atmanirbhar by 2047 or earlier than that. Notwithstanding, there are certain niche technologies on which we are working with our partner nations under some certain structured methodologies, which I alluded earlier. So it is a combination of giving fillip to indigenous production, indigenous development, as also working with our partners in terms of co-development and co-production and Make in India. We are in a good space, and we are optimistic that in the coming years, Indian Navy will be fully self-reliant.
So time's up. That was that. I ask you to join me in a round of applause for my panel, and thanks to everybody who asked a question.
Thank you very much, Jana. Thank you very much, panelists. If I could ask you to join us at the front of the stage for a quick photograph. We'll be moving into our final segment before we break for lunch. If I could request everyone to remain seated. As we close the panel, I'd like to invite on stage General Sadamasa Ui, Special Advisor to the Prime Minister for National Security of Japan, who will be delivering his spotlight address. Thank you very much, panelists. Please join me in welcoming General Sadamasa Ui to the stage for his spotlight address.